All right, let's talk about workflows. This is one of my favorite features on the platform because it allows you to automate your business on this system. And what it's going to do for you is to help you become more efficient. It's going to help your team become more efficient. It's going to ensure that people are all go through a same process. It's going to really help you increase conversions, and it's just going to save you a ton of time. So what actually is a workflow? Well, a workflow is nothing more than a series of events that happen because an initial trigger happened first. And so think of it like, okay, because X happened, we're going to go and do Y, and then we're going to keep doing with some more steps. So one of the best ways to learn what a workflow is just to pull one up and show you what it actually does. So here we've got a sample workflow pulled up. And as you can see, we have two parts to it. We have our trigger, which is this top section here. And then we have our series of steps down below. These are our actions that happen because that trigger fired. And so our first step here, we have something that happens in our system. Maybe somebody filled out a form, maybe they did a specific action, whatever it is, it's something that triggers and lets the system know, hey, whenever this happens, we're going to do these series of steps in response. And so you can imagine this can become extremely powerful for your business because you can have it automate different parts. So when this happens, you can make it do this. And when this situation happens, you can have this other thing that happens. And so it can be extremely powerful. And so think of it like you have a trigger section and you have an action section. So the first thing for a workflow, you need a trigger. And so let's talk about triggers for a minute. Triggers is just the thing that happens that launches the series of steps down below. So here's a couple. When somebody's birthday comes about, when a contact gets changed or added to the system, when a specific tag gets added to a prospect, when a note gets added, when a task gets added, when somebody fills out a form, when somebody replies, when a survey gets submitted, when a link gets clicked, when a Facebook lead form is submitted, or TikTok or LinkedIn, when you have an error, when somebody watches a video. So you can see how all these different things can happen, and then that can fire our automation. And so it can be extremely powerful. And as you can see, there's lots of triggers here that pretty much cover just about every situation. And so, it could be extremely powerful to where you can say, okay, when this happens, I want to do this in return. Now let's talk about actions. That makes the second part of this. And actions are just things that happen in a sequence of events. And so here we have a trigger, and then we have our actions. Our first one here is to create an opportunity. Then we have notes. We have an internal notification. So we can have lots of actions, and you can actually stack these on top of each other and have it do things at a specific time. And so as you can see, if we could just run through some of the actions, here we have create and update a contact. We can find a contact. We can add a tag, remove a tag. We can edit a conversation. We can add tasks. We can send an email, text, Slack message. We can do a phone call. We can leave a voicemail automatically. We can send a Facebook message. We can manually send an SMS. We can send a Google My Business message. So you get the idea. All these actions can happen automatically after an initial trigger is met. And so a workflow is nothing more than just a trigger that happens and then the actions that follow in a sequence of events. And these can get really, really technical. You can actually have all kinds of situations where it waits a specific amount of time before launching the next action. You can have it conditional to where if a customer replies, send this thing. If a customer doesn't open the email, send this thing. If a customer doesn't reply, do this step. And so you can really make some in-depth automations here. But a workflow is just nothing more than a trigger and then an action that takes place afterward. And you can really chain these together and make some really complex workflows for your business. So before we dive into how to actually create workflows, what I want to do is to start with the navigation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up here, and I'm going to jump over onto the platform. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get into workflows and kind of explain the navigation to where you can get familiarized with how to navigate around and be able to manipulate workflows here. So to get to workflows, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the automation tab on the left-hand side here, and it's going to launch your workflow list. And this is going to show all the workflows that you have, and maybe you have some already in there. Maybe you don't have any at all. It's totally okay. But here you're going to see the list of all the workflows that you have, and it's broken down by the name of the workflow, the status, total number enrolled, active enrolled, last updated, and created on. And then you have some 3 little dots over here. We can do some other things on those specific workflows. So you can edit your workflow. You can open in a new tab. You can draft the workflow. So pull it out of published into draft mode. You can move to the workflow into a folder. You can duplicate it. You can copy it to another account, or you can delete the workflows here. Now up at the top, we have some other navigation elements here. We have a create a folder button. This is super helpful. As you start creating lots of workflows, it's going to be important that you organize your workflows correctly. And so here's the create folder button. You can create folders that workflows go inside. And that way it's just easier to find. When you're creating lots of workflows, as you get used to this, you're probably going to have lots of automations that you'll see in your list here. And if you organize them correctly, it's going to be easier to find things. So the create a folder button is one that definitely helps out. You just click that button, you can give it a name, and then you could move workflows into it or create new ones under it. Now to the right of that, you can create a workflow. This is our blue create a workflow button. We're going to talk about that one in another video. But essentially, if you click that button, it's going to take you over to where you can create a workflow. Down below, we have our search filters. So here you can go and you can sort by most recent. You can categorize it as a list. You can search for workflows, and you can also add filters to where you can filter it by draft, published, or paused. And you can really kind of filter things down. So this is super helpful, this search bar, for finding your workflows. If you title things correctly, it's going to help you out in the long run. So be sure to take advantage of that. So what I'm going to do is then jump over to a workflow, and I'm going to show you the navigation on that. So if we jump into a sample workflow here, up at the top, we've got some navigation elements here. If you click this, it's going to take you back to your workflows list. Over in the middle, this is the name of your workflow. You can actually just click on it and you can change the name to something else. That way you title it whatever you want. Over on the right-hand side, you see this little clock icon. You can see when the workflow was last updated. And then you have a save button here. Now, I strongly recommend you use this save button quite frequently here. And let me just drag it onto screen a little bit better here. That way you can see it a little bit more. But this save button over on the right-hand side, you definitely want to use this on a regular basis because, when you're creating things, you don't want to have to go back and resave things. Down below, we have our draft or publish button. So when you're creating a workflows, things will be in draft mode. And then when you toggle this, it'll actually publish the workflow to where people can go through that workflow specifically. All right, then we've got our test workflow button right here. The test workflow button, what that does is that allows us to add a contact to the workflow and really test it out. So when you're creating workflows, what you want to do is add yourself into the CRM as a contact, and then you can put yourself through a workflow to see how all the parts work together and really test out that workflow to make sure everything's working appropriately and everything's firing. So it's a definite helpful button there that you can use. Now over on the right-hand side, you'll see you've got this stats view button. What this does, if you toggle that, all the actions, it'll actually keep a tally on how many people opened your emails or added to a sequence, things like that. It's a good view to, at a whole, you can kind of see where people are, how things are delivering and so forth with the stats view. Next up in the middle, we have a couple more links here. We have the builder. That's this panel here that allows us to build out our workflows. So as you can see, when we click the builder, it allows us to build out our workflows here. And then we have settings. This is going to be your workflow settings. And this one's an important one because there's a couple of settings in here that can really dramatically affect your workflows. The first one is to allow reentry. So workflows, once a contact has already gone through it, they may skip that person if they add themselves to that workflow again. And so as a business, you may or may not want people to be able to go back through a workflow. In certain cases, though, you might actually want them to be able to go through the same workflow again. That way they're not, in some cases it might send out the same marketing messages. In other cases, you might want that to happen. And so the allow reentry allows people to go through the same workflow multiple times. Stop on response. If you are doing a follow-up workflow where you're responding to a lead, encouraging them to respond to you, maybe you want your workflow to stop following up with them if they respond. And so if you tick that box, it'll actually stop the workflow for that specific contact if they responded to your workflow. Then you've got the account time zone. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up the window for your time zone, and maybe you want it to go for the account or the contact. And contact will look at the contact's time zone and determine when the best time to send them a message would be. And the account would just allow you to send it when you determine from your specific area. Now, you may want to send out messages during a specific window of time. So if you tick this, it allows us to send out messages on certain days. So let's say somebody signs up on Sunday and you don't want to send messages out on Sunday. You can do that. You can just tick that box, and then Sundays, it'll wait until Monday to start them on a workflow. So you can set up specific times. You can restrict when actions fire through the windows. This is super helpful because you may not want to send out messages at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's just not a good thing to do. And so you can set up a window of time to when things fire based on your parameters of your business. You can also set up the sender details of your emails here. That way the default from name and from email will be pre-populated into your workflows. And you can also mark things as read as they come through. So you've got the enrollment history here. That's going to show all the contacts that have gone through a workflow. And then you have execution logs. These are all the steps that are performed by the workflow. This is helpful for debugging and learning like what steps are kind of not working in the process. So you can see like if someone's not getting something, maybe they're hung up on this specific step, and then you can kind of look through the logs and see what's happening in your workflow there. So that is the navigation on the system. And then on our builder side, this is where we can add different stuff. So as you can see, we've got for our workflow, we have a trigger we need to add. And then we also have this little plus icon here. And this is going to be for our actions. So we need two parts of our workflow, the trigger and the action. So the first thing you want to do is to select your trigger. So the trigger is going to be the thing that happens in your system that automatically starts firing out the additional steps. So this could be things like, somebody fills out a form, somebody watches a video, somebody opens an email. Those are all triggers. So what you would do is click on add a new trigger. Then you select your trigger from the list here. And then once you have your trigger, that's going to set up the initial step. And then next you have your action, where you add in actions that happen after the fact. And after you select these, you can actually add additional actions down below. So those are all the elements to build a workflow. In other videos, we're actually going to dive deeper into workflows. We're going to go through triggers. We're going to go through actions. We're going to go through all the steps. So stay tuned and check out the next video on the next topic with workflows.